I need you to hate so I can use you for your energy.
This is Real Sales Talk. Real sales advice from real sales practitioners. Giving you tips on how to dominate your sales quota are your co-hosts, Sean Mitchell and Phil Keene. This episode is brought to you by Convertist. We are incredibly excited to have partnered together with Convertist, which helps SaaS and services run managed outbound campaigns for teams looking to drive new pipeline opportunities. For teams targeting mid-size and enterprise deals, Convertist integrates with CRMs like Salesforce to uncover actionable data in their sales processes, which enables them to find areas of improvement and double down on strategies that actually work. Benchmark the lead generation performance expected of a seasoned SDR and identify actionable areas of improvement in a sales process, all out of one place with Convertist. For teams looking to measure and enhance their performance of their sales funnel and architect a better revenue engine, cast an application to join the Convertist Slack group. It's at convertist.com/Slack. That's Convertist, convertist.com/Slack, SLACK.
What is going on, Real Sales Talk family? We are back. We have a very awesome guest, Steve Richard. I've known Steve for quite some time and had a chance to learn a lot from him so far. So I'm excited about this one to get you guys in front of him, take some of his knowledge and just experience and share it with you. Steve, you have a great background and a lot of different areas. So now you're CRO at ExecVision, which is a call recording and coaching software. Tell me more about you and our audience so they kind of know where your background comes from, so that way they know that they are listening to a practitioner and an expert.
Yeah, man. I'll tell you what, the key word there was family. I feel like you and I are family now, Phil. We've been hanging out for so long. Originally I was a sales guy. Actually, before I was a sales guy, I was supposed to go into finance into investment banking. Couldn't get a job. Literally, I went 0 for 22. Got into sales because I had to pay off school loans, and someone said, "You're good at presentations. You should go into sales." I'm like, "All right, sounds good." I had no idea what the hell that meant. Started cold calling for the corporate executive board. Started this business called Foresight, which does outsourced appointment setting, again, kind of on a whim. And pretty much I'm an unemployable entrepreneur. I've been at it for 12 years with my business partner, David Stillman. We acquired a company, which is now ExecVision, the software for coaching calls, call coaching software. But the thing I've learned along the way here is, there's a lot of people out there that spout knowledge on stuff. And so you actually use it and test it to see if it works for you, for what you sell, who you sell to, and how to manage your team. It's all just a bunch of talk. And so I guess the reason people should listen to us is we've tested stuff. I think both you and I have tested stuff and actually measured it, as opposed to the average Joes out there haven't done that process.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic, and it's funny. It's actually something that's come up in my conversations as well as yours recently, and this has been unprompted by people, which is the verbatim quote is like, "Hey, managers just don't know how to manage today." And you're bringing it up a little bit there, but I think that's a great topic for our audience to go to. So for anybody that is an entrepreneur, you're looking to get your sales team kicked off, and maybe you don't have sales chops, that's why you're listening to us. And what do I tell my team? How do I coach my team? What do I talk to them about? If you're a junior manager or even a senior manager, just having a different set of ears or a different idea of how you go talking about it. We're going to get into some depth here, but talk about kind of the problems that exist in the world with just managers in general, Steve, when it comes to actually managing their people.
Yeah, this is a big one. So when I first got into the ExecVision business, our company's got about 50 employees. So at the time, I turned into salesperson number one. So I stopped being one of the owners of the company effectively, and I started just being a sales rep again. And originally, I was my own SDR too, which you want to talk about a humbling experience. That's a pretty humbling experience. It's tougher to sell now than ever before. So, and I'm supposed to be the guy teaching this stuff. So anyway, I had probably, I measured it again. It was something like 217 conversations, if I remember the number at that point. And I went back in and I reviewed the calls based on what was discussed in the keywords. And the words that kept coming up again and again and again were consistency and accountability. So I wrote this blog article about those two words, they're the most important words in sales management, and arguably management in general, is consistency and accountability. And in that article, I talk about my wife, who has 4 kids. My wife, we have 4 kids, but she's the one that's staying home and raising them, which is even tougher than what I'm doing. And when I just observed, I kind of connected some dots, right? I kept hearing these sales leaders I was talking to and these CEOs and business owners talking about consistency and accountability. And then I watched how my wife essentially managed the kids. And it's all through a series of rewards and consequences, consistency and accountability. And everyone knows what the naughty spot is, and everyone knows how you get in there and how you get out. And everyone knows that at this time of day, you go get ready for bed and you do these things. And that's what's lacking frequently in management, especially in growing companies. And it's hard, man. This is hard because I fall victim to this too. I'm out there selling. I'm still acting like a sales rep, but I'm supposed to also manage the 5 people in the sales org. Other than me, we have basically a 6-person sales org. That's tough. That's tough. So you have to find shortcuts and methods for getting as much consistency and accountability as you can. Otherwise, everyone's saying different stuff. Everyone's doing different activities in different ways. And then you have the board coming to you and saying, well, I need KPIs, I need to have indicators, and I need to understand trends on where we're going. Well, if everyone's doing something differently, how am I going to be able to provide them any kind of trends on what's working, what's not, where we need additional dollars for investment, et cetera? So the key words there are consistency and accountability. And I think that's what's, as I observe, I've worked with hundreds of sales orgs consulting over the years. I see that there's a generally deficiency in those areas until you find the good managers, which I'd say about 1 out of every 4 that I've worked with is like, wow, this person was born for this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And when you find them, they have that same pattern of consistency and accountability, just like my wife does with kids.
So you said a lot of things I want to pull out there. And the first thing is you talked about accountability. So I was fortunate enough that early in my career, I actually got to take over a sales organization. It was 12 people at the time, and it was underperforming, like massively underperforming. And to the point where when I walked in, I sat down, the first month was basically, let's just talk. What do you need from me as a manager? And every single person said, we need to be held accountable. Huh. Yeah, we need to be held accountable. Like everything's broken. No one knows what to do. When people don't.
It's counterintuitive, right? It's counterintuitive because you would think that they would just be like, leave me alone, let me sell. And I don't want, that intervention.
Right.
But the reality is, just like the kids need that structure, the salespeople need that structure. Frankly, I need to be held accountable, right?
Right.
It's hard to hold yourself accountable to certain things. I'll tell you, I want to hear the rest of that story. I'll tell you one of the things that we do real quick is anytime I catch someone, a prospect or a customer who emails us and has in their signature line their cell phone number. You and I both know cell phone numbers are like gold in sales, right? Because then if it's okay at that point, text them, call them on their cell. If they don't put that cell phone number or that direct line into Salesforce, literally, Phil, and I'm not joking, I have them do 10 push-ups. And it's all fun, right? It's all done. You got to do it the right way, in the right spirit, and create the right environment and culture for that. But I'll be like, Alex, you didn't put. I forgot. Okay, 10 push-ups, right? And we all count them out. We clap with each other. And it's great. But it's that kind of little stuff that you have to do along the way that if you don't do that with your team, or like a swear jar. We started a new one where we use a dialer where you disposition your calls. And a lot of times people don't disposition them the right way. So if you go look at our ExecVision instance where all of our call recordings are game tape is, a lot of them say no answer, no voicemail, which is one of our dispositions, but the call's like 8 minutes long. And I go, wow, that's a really, really long no answer, no voicemail, right? It's like, oh yeah, I forgot. So we have a new thing where you have to put $1 into the swear jar every time you do your call outcome the wrong way in the dialer, right? Simple little stuff like that is how you lift the whole organization and operation. Because again, without them doing that the right way, you're analyzing garbage data for senior executives. You're not able to help them diagnose where their struggle is. Is their problem that their dial to conversation rate is messed up, in which case we have to go do a different set of things, like maybe they have to phone prospect better. Maybe we should get a better data source in the first place. Is their problem conversation to appointment? If their batting average is off, we got to dig in the call recording. So it's a different place to go to find out what's going on. Is it appointment to opportunity creation, in which case we got to go and find out what are they doing on their discovery calls? Maybe we're scheduling meetings with people who are outside of our ideal customer profile. So again, you're digging into different places, but unless you have that foundation of consistency and accountability in the systems of record of the business, you can't help them get better.
Right. And I think the really unique thing, what you just said there, is you're basically giving your team a way that they can manage each other.
Yeah.
As a VP, you don't have the bandwidth a lot of times, or as a CRO or a director of sales or whatever the size of your organization, typically you're going to have between 6 to 12 reports. In that, you're going to have an issue with just being able to be at all places at all times. You just can't do it. So looking at that stuff, like giving away your peers can manage each other, it helps extend it, and it makes it a little bit fun. You make it a game out of it. Like you're saying, hey, throw $1 in. At the end of the week, if we have enough money, we'll go buy pizza together, and we'll talk about it and laugh about the fact that we're making these mistakes, because you're going to make mistakes. You're people. And I think allowing them to make those mistakes, I think it helps. And I think it allows people to feel okay in this situation. And that was actually something I saw early on with the other team that I was talking to. Like, when they asked me how accountable, I'd ask the questions like, so what's accountability meaning for you? And then it's always like, well, Johnny over here doesn't do his job XYZ time, and I'm perfect. Great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold everybody accountable equally, right? So what that means for you, Steve, is that there might be a month from now I'm going to come and ask you to do something. Are you okay with me telling you that? Yeah. Well, how do you want me to do that for you? And it's an interesting way to have that conversation with your team. So how do you want me to hold you accountable? And a lot of times they're like, well, that's a good question. Like, well, you don't have to give me an answer today. Why don't you come back to me next week in our one-on-one? I want you to tell me. That's the only thing I need you to do the next week, is I want you to tell me how I can hold you accountable to make you better at your job.
That's great.
And it would automatically flip that, where it gave them insight. They were able to come to me and tell me, hey, here's how I want to be managed. And oftentimes when you got in the place, I wasn't trying to do the gotcha moment, but a lot of times if you didn't do something right, the question would be things like, hey, Steve, so we talked about this 3 weeks in a row. I mean, how long is this going to go on? I mean, what would you do if I was in your place right now?
I got a couple things that are coming to mind. By the way, I love that question. How do you want me to hold you accountable? I don't ask that. That's a tip I'm going to go and implement, Phil. That's great. I think I'm even going to write it on the wall. That's what I usually do with this kind of stuff. Yeah. So we can all see it, and they go, oh yeah, right. Couple stories here. One is a guy named, Keenan.
Yeah.
And Keenan did one of my call camps. We do these breakdown real sales calls. And the call camp, he talked about this. We did a coach to coach session. So it was all about teaching coaches how to be better coaches. And in that, he has this slide. And when I first saw it, I was like, what the hell is he going to talk about here? And it was like 3 bubbles. There was a big bubble, there was a smaller bubble, and then a little tiny bubble at the bottom. And inside it said freedom. And basically what his whole point was is when you first start, or if you're hitting your numbers, you're in the big bubble. You get as much freedom in the world, right? As a salesperson, you can kind of do, there's a little bit less, honestly, consistency when you're hitting your numbers, because we let salespeople that are hitting their numbers get away with stuff. Maybe we should,
absolutely,
right? Then if they start to not, or if, again, there's inconsistencies in other things not related to hitting the number, like logging stuff in Salesforce the right way, which everyone's got to do, or CRM, whatever, then you move to the next bubble, and you have less freedom. And then finally you get to a point where if you're on a plan, you've got no freedom, where like you gotta fall in line with the program, because we know the program is working for these 5 other people, and for whatever reason you're rejecting the program, you don't have freedom anymore. It goes away. So that's the first thing I think is cool. The other one is Henry Shook of DiscoverOrg. Now DiscoverOrg acquired Rain King, Discover King, or we don't know what it's going to be called. But Henry Shook, the CEO, has been a friend of mine for years. He said this one time on a webinar I did with him. I love this. He said, when I'm going to have that conversation with people, I'll sit down with them. I'll go, hey, look, I'm not trying to be a jerk. I don't want to be a jerk. I think it's not like you're doing a bad job. It's like, I think that you're not doing your best work. And I certainly know that I can do better in my role as well. And I can do better work myself. Let's figure out what that looks like. Would you agree? Would you disagree? If someone thinks they're doing their best work and everyone else around them can see they're not doing their best work, it's time to challenge them on that in a nice way. So I like that whole approach of like, I really don't want to be a jerk, and I think that you can do better. I think you can give us your best work, and we're not seeing your best work right now. It's a great line.
It's so two things there. I love where this is heading because so that conversation, Henry's spot on when it comes to that. So if you look at that conversation, it's more of like whenever you get your parents, they're like, "I'm not mad, Steve. I'm just disappointed," and you're like, "Oh man, that hurts." That hurts real bad.
It kind of goes back to parenting, man. It really does. It's really interesting how a lot of this stuff goes back to the way we were raised and parenting and all that kind of thing that you bring out for sure. I think someone who does a really good job of this is you and I both know Lauren Bailey.
Yeah.
She's got the inside sales training consulting company Factor 8. I think she does a really good job of as a facilitator and her people as facilitators of getting people to buy in. And this is where, there's management science and then there's management art. And I think that the art part of management is the tough part. It's the winning over of the hearts and minds of people. I was once told, and I love this, it's what are people doing when you're not looking? Right? I'm not so concerned about what they're doing when I'm looking. I'm concerned about what they're doing when I'm not looking, and how they're going to behave towards the business, our clients and customers, each other. That's the key to the whole thing. And how do you do that? You do it by winning over hearts and minds, and that's where people like Lauren do such a great job, or the Bridge Group with those consultants. They do such a great job because a lot of times people don't, companies don't have the ability to do that. They have a really hard time winning over the hearts and minds of the people. In which case, you really have to bring in someone third party. I find there's like a charisma factor to this too, where you can have someone who is not as charismatic try to institute the same system of consistency and accountability, and it falls flat, and nobody cares. And inmates run the asylum just because they're not as effective at delivering it. And I know Sandler, and DISC, and Sandler buys into DISC. You have to know thyself too as a manager. So for example, I'm an I over D, and I was once taught by this guy Andy. What the heck's his last name? I can't remember. The guy in DC who's phenomenal. He said, I over D is like the Will Smith persona, right? But the problem with the Will Smith persona is like, I'm everybody's friend, but at the same time, I kind of let people get away with stuff. It's okay just this one time, right? I'll let the kids have the ice cream on the weekend when I'm really not supposed to. I'll say, you know what? I know you messed up. I'll give you a pass this time. Versus really a lot of the best managers are the D over I, and that's more like Oprah Winfrey, where they're very, very driven and they still have that persona and charisma, but the drive is more important, where they hold the line. And actually, my business partner is a D over I as our CEO, and as the CRO, I'm the I over D. So the two kind of complement each other, because when it comes to a point where I have to really hold the line on something, he's going to hold me accountable to holding the line on everybody else in a way that if I was just on my own, I'd be like, it's cool, have the ice cream. You know what I mean?
I would have never guessed that David was a high D. But no, I think they're strong. I think what you're talking about there, the way that I've always been able to articulate that was actually given to me by someone like 10 years ago when it talks about leadership. And they're like, the way that you can judge if you're a successful manager is if you were to leave an organization or leave something at the end of 6 months, is it still running the same way that you left it? And that's a really good way to gauge it. And if you think about the world as you're putting these together, could this run for 6 months or longer once I leave the organization? And that's something where if you're putting that type of system in place, the systematic approach of how it works, and you're also have to train your people to be self-sufficient. You have to get people to a place where they know how to run the system without you, and you should be able to be absent without having to have a problem that exists without you being there. And I think that's something that I've seen from really strong leaders, is that when they leave for 6 months, and it's actually a really good gauge as I've watched it happen in my career now, that 6 month period, it shows you that were you a good leader or not. So that's one thing. I want to go back on one thing though. So you're talking about Keenan, and he has the big bubble, the little bubble, and the smaller bubble. Yeah. The one thing I love about it, it's very black and white. You're here, right? And what I've always seen, the SDR world very well. SDRs always complain about, I don't want to make X amount of phone calls a week. All right, great. Hit your number, and you can make as many calls as you want. Yeah, you can do whatever you like.
You want to do it through social? Cool.
Yeah. If you miss your number, this is the number you have to hit. And I've documented that and put it down on paper. It's like, you can be as free flowing as you want and do it however you want. Just hit your number. I don't care. When you miss, you have to do this. And when you miss big, you're going to have to do this exactly like this. And there's no cross T or dotted I that you miss. So you have to do it this way. So I think, and that's that layer. It's kind of the same thing, like document it, make it easy, make it black and white. So I know, and make it very clear about how to make this work and communicate with your team.
Real Sales Talk family, want to take a quick break just to say thank you to our partner Convertist. If you're interested in improving your game to drive leads, opportunities, or closes, join the Convertist Slack group, a place where sales and marketing operators can talk best practices to architect a revenue engine. Cast an application at convertist.com/Slack. That's convertist.com/Slack. Now let's get back to the episode.
Yeah, it's great. I'll tell you what that brings to mind is another thing that Keenan talked about on that webinar is how to coach. And this is one area that I hear this over and over again. We're never taught how to coach the right way. So Keenan's a ski instructor, and there's actually different degrees of ski instructors, almost like you can get your black belt in karate. So he's like the middle tier, but he wants to keep going up the ladder over time. And when you're a ski instructor, or if you're taught to be a professional instructor on pretty much any nuanced skill, could be playing the piano, could be whatever, they teach you that what you need to do is observe what you see or hear, describe that to the person, and then prescribe. That's the third part. And that's where we get it all backwards as coaches, because what is our temptation as a coach?
Just tell you what to do. Just do this way.
Do it this way. Do it this way, right? But that doesn't help the person, because the person in many cases goes, I thought I was doing it that way. What they need to understand first is they need to be told what they're doing, because they're in their own head. You know what I mean? They can't get outside to see it. That's why game tape and what we're doing is so important, is because you can get outside of yourself and observe yourself and describe yourself.
Yeah.
It's a powerful thing. So anyway, the whole thing is with the coach, you have the coach that first just simply observes and describes without casting judgment. Because when you cast judgment, how does someone feel if they're being coached and they feel like they're being judged? They shut down. They go in their shell like a turtle. Versus what we're going to do is just simply, okay, here's what you're doing. And I can tell you that here a kind of a good example of this. We have this happen a lot at in our Vorsight business using the Exec Vision platform. Is a lot of new SDRs, they understand the concept of pre-call research. They understand the concept of learn something about the company and the person you're calling before you call them, and then use that information in context in the call. They get it, but for whatever reason, they don't do it, and they don't implement it. Or when they do it, it's really clunky and it's not the way it should be done, and it doesn't have an impact for them. So how do you get someone to buy into, hey, you should actually spend 2 minutes before you make a phone call the first time, gathering information which you put into a special field in your CRM, so that when you're dialing down your list, you can use that information to start your call, to open your call and break the ice? Well, the best way to do it is to just simply observe and describe. In your intro, you said this, right? And they go, yep, that's exactly right. And because of that, what was the impact? The impact was the prospect objective right off the bat. You started talking about product and feature right off the bat when you picked up the phone, or you asked an open-ended question that you hadn't earned the right to ask. Here's what you did, right? I'm observing, I'm describing. Then you get to the point where you say, all right, here's the impact of what happened. And they go, well, what's the impact? Well, the prospect objected to me right off the bat. Now all of a sudden I'm going into objection handling mode. I'm only 45 seconds into the call. That's not a good place to be, right? Okay, great. Then you prescribe. What could you do differently? Well, I could obviously, Steve, go and get pre-call research, and I could use it in the beginning to make it not about product, but to make it something about them and earn the right to ask questions. Great, go do that, right? And that process, hats off to Keenan for taking something from the skiing world and bringing it into sales. That process of observe, describe, understand the impact, and then prescribe is so cool for coach to coach.
I think it's great. It's something that you also brought up there. And I've actually said this in a different webinar with you before, and I don't know if you remember it, but my favorite quote ever in that scenario is, once you get them past the place where you observe and you describe it and you get them to the place where they understand the problem that exists, is I role play. So I walk them through, hey, tell me, do it again for me. Show me again. How would you say it again? Let's talk about it. Let's do it again. Let's do it every day until you get it right. And I think it's something where my favorite quote of all times for sales is actually a Magic Johnson quote, which is, professionals practice in private. So before you get on the game field, or before you walk in the court, or get into the pit, if you're a music person, right? Your idea, like, you got to practice over and over and over again. So that way, whenever you get to it, you already have the pattern recognition of how things should potentially work. And you know, when you run into a certain scenario, what you could potentially say in result. It's also why it takes a lot of time. So when you're an SDR and you're asked to be promoted in 3.5 months, you're just not ready yet. I'm sorry, you're not. And the reason why is you haven't seen enough patterns, right, to have a conversation that knows when I hit this roadblock, what should I say in response to it? And there's a lot of things that go to just navigating the conversation. And that's why the SDR role is so crucial whenever you're just talking on the phone or you're just having conversations. I know it feels tedious and it feels laborious and it's hard, and it is hard. But when you get past it, like, your ability to have conversations should be so much better. It's also why I truly believe that you should be on the phone as an SDR, period, because you got to build those skills, and there's no other way to build it. You're not going to build it sitting in an email. That's why I see a lot of SDRs fail when they go to an SD or an AE role, is because they've never had conversations on the phone on a regular basis. And I'm going on a rant here, but
no, you're rant on, man. So I'll give you a couple things, that I'm hearing here. The first thing is, let's stop this epidemic of people getting promoted before they should be. It's ridiculous. The data is extremely clear. The Bridge Group did a study. Corporate Executive Board did a study. Corporate Executive Board looked at quota attainment. The magic number for quota attainment is if you were an SDR for more than, it was 15 or 16 months, I believe was the number, 16 months. The quota attainment was significantly higher. It was like triple or quadruple than if you were an SDR for like under 6. It was crazy. So if you're trying, if you're being an SDR to learn how to sell,
learn how to sell.
SDR first. Fight through, and I get it. Like, when you hit month 6 at SDR, you kind of hit a plateau. You sort of like, oh, I got this. No, you don't got it. Fight up the next learning curve. At month 12, you feel like you hit another plateau. Same thing happened with me when I started as an SDR. And then after that, you fight through that one and you get it to like month 18. Now you're really at a new place.
Yeah.
Now you're at a new place. The other thing this brings to mind is, you remember the old the Super Bowl with the Seahawks and the Patriots, and the famous play where the Seahawks drove the ball down with almost no time left, and they had the opportunity to run Marshawn Lynch beast to punch it into the end zone. They didn't, and instead they threw. Malcolm Butler for the Patriots intercepted. The rest is history. Patriots get yet another ring. So what happened there? Malcolm Butler post-game interview, and this is like, Sal Paolantonio sticking the microphone in his face right after he had won the Super Bowl. Your brain's not really working, so you're just kind of spitting stuff out. He said, man, I watched my film, and we did that in practice, the things that you and I are talking about. And they did that so many times, and he said, I knew that formation, and I knew I had to jump the route. Now, this is not the sort of thing where you can call a timeout in the moment and go, wait a minute, what am I supposed to do here? If you're not operating on a subconscious level of being unconscious, at that point you're not even thinking about what you're about to do. You just react. It's split second. You can't do that unless you practice and unless you study film. You just, there's no way you're going to be able to react in the moment, and that's the difference. And if you look at the difference between the best salespeople and the average, or the ones that don't make it, it's not big differences. It's fractional things. In simple things like, I'll give you a real example. One of our customers that's using the ExecVision platform right now, they sell a very, very transactional product, and it's driven by free trials. So they get tons of inbound calls, or they call outbound on web forms, but these people have requested information. They've requested to talk to someone about a trial. So in the course of the conversation, the rep tries to sell them a very cheap thing. It's a small business. Sell them a very inexpensive, it's a job posting in this case. And the best reps, what they figured out is if the prospect says yes, they send an email in the moment, and they stay with the prospect on the phone while the prospect completes the creation of the account. What the other reps are doing, the average reps are doing, is the prospect says, I would like to do this. Go ahead, let's move forward. Great, I'm gonna send you an email. Take care. If you have any trouble, you have my contact info. Bye. Yeah. They don't schedule something else. They don't stay with the prospect on the moment to complete. And then I heard the next phone call that happens, a subsequent phone call after the rep chases down the prospect again. Finally, they answer the phone. And the subsequent call is basically the prospect being like confused. I didn't know how to finish the trial. People need their hands held. So again, what's the difference between staying on the phone with them for another, minute and a half to have them finish creating their account versus not? It's not hard. It's not hard. But again, it's the subtleties like that we're not, as an organization, as a profession of sales, We don't have the consistency we need. We don't have the accountability we need. And if everyone just did it that way, sales would go up. These people would make more money.
There's certain pattern recognition. So that's an interesting way. You think about the transactional side, and I've heard this before with other transactional side of things. Like if you just get them to log in, and just get into the product, like the chance of winning that is like 5,000% greater. It's some astronomical number that it doesn't matter at that point. You're just going to win a lot more, right?
Or here, I'll give you one more for non-transactional people. For non-transactional people, asking about who else is involved in this decision. You and I have both seen this.
Yeah.
Salespeople who are just starting, they could be young, they could be old. I don't care. I don't care who you are. When you're just starting, they get happy ears and they have a conversation with one person, and the one person's like, boy, we love this and we're going to move forward. And then they go to you, Phil, I got a deal. Phil, I got a deal. And you and I are both have been in this game long enough where we're like, okay, let's talk about you got a deal. Who else are you talking to in the business? Well, guess what? You have a single-threaded opportunity. You don't have a multi-threaded opportunity. So right now, your probability of that deal closing just went way down, right? And I got red flags going off in my mind like this is not good. This is not good. So it's asking about decision makers, getting anybody who's selling anything at any level, who else is involved in this decision.
Yeah. And I think it's all things. It's funny. So as I've had a lot of conversations, obviously we sell sales tech to salespeople, but so I've had a lot of conversations with VPs of sales. It's interesting. So have a conversation, you'll talk about, so what are the things you look at inside of CRM, or what's the things you're looking at? And they're like, oh, it's all deal mechanic things. It's things like, oh, we have value and close date and all this stuff. They have to have it for stage, and each stage, like they have this thing filled out. But what you're saying exactly is what most people, you can lead them to the path and get them to say it out loud, which is, yeah, there's gaps. Like the things I need, like I need to know when it's going to close, why it's going to close, who's going to need to be involved to get it closed, like what process do I have legal I got to get through, and what would that process look like? Those are the things that you actually need the answers to, that the things you put inside of your CRM just don't have that data. And the problem is the salespeople don't live in CRM. They don't like using it. So they just take this and put it in a notepad for themselves, and then they're jotting down notes, and then you have to interrogate them as a manager to get to that. So I think you got to find a systematic way to find this information, and there's ways to do it by putting required fields out there, or just adding different fields, or even set up something like, I know I've seen companies do this before, where they'll send out some kind of survey before they do a one-on-one and say, I need you to answer these three questions before you get into it.
Hang on, time out on that. A shout out John Birdsong at Wide Angle for that. He's got great software, one-on-one software for sales managers and reps. I love it. Yeah,
it's good. It's out of Atlanta. Johnny Birdsong it's a strong tech for sure. It's that kind of stuff where you gotta know what you're walking into your conversation and talking about. And I think that's a really big gap. Is a lot of times people just want to be free form, and I'm a big fan of one-on-ones or personal time. One-on-one's the time that I get to know Steve at a different level. But at the same time, I got to know how to guide you. So like 70% of my conversation might be what's going on in Steve's life, how you feel about work, how you feel about things, what's the roadblocks of getting in the way of being successful. And then we'll get into, all right, so let's talk about 3 of your deals you have going on. I'm looking at them right now. I see some gaps. Let's have those conversations, Steve. You don't have a compelling event and you think this is closing in 2 weeks. Tell me why you think it's closing. Like those are conversations I'm willing to have. Right.
That's the science with the data, and that's management science. Okay, and we need that. That's great. And then the art is how to build that trust, so that you can be credible and have accountability. I'm not going to be held accountable to someone that I don't trust, right? I mean, that's an obvious thing. If I don't trust you, you think that I'm going to let you hold the line on accountability for me? I don't trust you.
Yeah,
I'm out of here, right? Or I'm kind of mentally checked out and I'm just sort of doing my job half-assed to get by and keep getting my paycheck. But it's a very, very important point in management and one-on-ones. And frankly, I don't do a good job. I would rather have you, honestly, Phil, I'd rather have you managing my sales team than me managing my sales team, because I'm bad about that. I'll end up doing something else to go close one of my own deals versus really getting to know the people and then creating that trust barrier. Basically.
I think if you think about it, if you pull it back a layer, so it goes back to what we talked about, what Keenan said before, is like observe and describe first. If you're stuck, if you're 6 months in the job and you feel like you're floundering and like you're treading water right now, take a step back. Like go ride shotgun on 3 deals with 3 different reps, and then go see the things that the 1 or 2 reps are doing well that are top performers, and then go grab the maybe the worst or like the middle of the pack person that you can't figure out why they're not working out, go ride shotgun. And what you can start to do is not even be the person that's giving the answer. It's you're just connecting the two dots. Like, hey, Steve, did you know that David said this on a call? I thought it was really cool. You should talk to him about why he said that. Knowing that it will help you. Right?
Yeah.
When I connect with David,
Pick only a few behaviors. And this is one of the initiatives we have anytime we work with a customer for Exec Vision. We help them establish their scorecard. Okay. And it's a call review sheet. And the process of doing that's pretty straightforward. You go, okay, what are your selling roles? We got an SDR, we got an AE, we got a CSM. Great. What are the 1 or 2 calls that really matter for them? Here's what they are. Great. Now, what are the key parts of those calls? It's, what are just, and here's a simple framework. If you're struggling with that, which frankly a lot of people do, which is shocking because it's like, how do you define good? You know what I mean? If you can't define good, how are you going to give, there's no target. There's no target for your salespeople to aim for if they don't know what good is. So here's a simple framework that you could use really to apply to any customer facing call. I don't care if it's support, anything at any level. Number 1, did the call have an opening? Was there a strong opening? And that strong opening could mean a lot of different things. Number 2, did the call turn into some sort of a meaningful conversation, like a meaningful conversation about whatever the thing is that needs to happen, their business, their problem, their challenge, if it's a support issue, whatever, but they're turned into a conversation rather than a monologue. Number 3, did the call close for some sort of concrete next steps, whatever those are, and they were mutually agreed upon next steps. And Phil, I'll tell you what, if we just took that simple 3-step framework of those 3 questions and we applied it to every customer-facing call happening in every company out there, the economy would probably grow by 5%.
Yeah, it's funny. So I actually one of the fastest growing companies here in Indiana, it's a tech company, and I was talking to the VP of sales there. And he's like, if I could just get everybody to prep for phone calls before I actually got on them, and just do the things they said when they follow up, we'd win more business.
Yeah,
and it's crazy to think like it doesn't have to be it's not big data solutions. Sometimes it's really small data solutions that if you just move the needle a little bit there, the small tweaks, you can make a big adjustment. And I'll make one more point, and then we're going to move on to rapid fire and ask you 3 questions. My point I got from one of my managers was you can only teach 3 things at a time. So when you sit down in your monthly 101, the first week is you say, these are the 3 things we're working on, Steve. We're only going to work on these 3 things. And I want you to get really good, but then you're really clear about once you have it, it's a tangible goal that you can know it's quantifiable of some sorts, and it has a timeline to it because it's the end of the month. So by the end of the month, Steve, I want you to do this, but how you're going to get there very clearly is this, this, and this. So it's out of the 3 things you're going to work on to fix this one problem. Like if you could do that and you could document it, put it out there, and you just follow up every week. All right, did we do it?
And then it's reminder, repetition until it becomes muscle memory. That's right.
Practice over and over. Cool. So Steve, before we jump into rapid fire, for people that are listening on any of our podcast channels, we appreciate you there. How do we find you, Steve? And then we're going to jump over to YouTube. You guys can go ahead and subscribe there. We're going to go to rapid fire. So Steve, how do I find you? How do we get in touch with you? Tell me about Exec Vision, and we'll go from there.
Real simple. Here's what you do. 1, you connect with me on LinkedIn. 2, you get signed up for Call Camp. If you Google Exec Vision Call Camp, it's very easy to find, or if you go on our website, there's a pop-up that I encourage you to sign up. It is free monthly sales training, no bait and switch, no BS. We're doing one upcoming, Phil, which is going to be exciting. Looking forward to that. And what we do is we listen to and break down real sales calls. In my work doing consulting and training over the years, I got very frustrated with the industry of sales training because it's a lot of, well, back in the day, I used to do it like this, and that's why I sold stuff. And it doesn't, okay, prove it. Like, let's actually make calls, and let's hear how this works in the real world. And you don't get a whole lot of support from the sales training industry on that. So what I said is, forget this. We're going to have a free webinar series where we break down, it's just like John Gruden quarterback camp, real sales calls for what works and what doesn't, and we do it every single month. We've got an incredible library on demand on the website too. Just go to the Exec Vision website and you'll find Call Camp. It's pretty easy.
Yeah, I think it's great. You get to listen to real calls, like actually hear how other people are saying it, and you'll pick things up. I think the best people in sales are the best thieves. Like the people that, hey, you said it that way, I love it, I'm gonna try it. So go try it. Go listen to Call Camp. I think it's super engaging and really good content. So, All right, we're going to jump into rapid fire. So everybody that's listening on the podcast, thank you so much for listening. But Steve, let's get into it. So Steve, if you had to tell somebody today the biggest mistake that's happening in sales, they need to stop doing it, what is that one thing?
Oh boy, biggest mistake happening in sales right now. Biggest mistake happening in sales. Over cadencing and over.
Thanks for listening to Real Sales Talk, and a big thank you to our sponsor, Convertist. If you enjoyed this episode, go write a review on iTunes or any other podcasting platform.